So today, I'm going to talk to you about a topic that pretty much everybody has become pretty familiar with over the last couple of years: conservation. What's the first thing that pops into your head when you think about conservation? Perhaps it's a rainforest, teeming with all kinds of insect, plant, and bird life. Or perhaps, being from Florida, you think about coral reefs and the host of marine ecosystems that call those areas home. Honestly, it could be something as simple as thinking about the monarch butterfly, the giant panda, or any other endangered species that's caught your attention. But I can tell you from the many conversations that I've had about conservation biology, something that most people don't tend to associate with it is technology, medicine, the development of human society. Essentially, what I'm going to do today is try to run you through a number of scenarios in which biodiversity has fundamentally shaped the way society has developed. You see, when I was first asked to give this talk, I struggled for a long time trying to think about how I could integrate a topic like conservation with something like the art of technology. And what I essentially came to the conclusion of is that the strongest argument that I can give you all today in support of conservation would be to show you how the technology that we have come to so heavily rely upon today wouldn't be what it is without conservation, without biodiversity. How this concept of biomimicry has become integrated into every single step of our technological development, and how the very future of our society is dependent on the complex web of ecological interactions that occurs every single day. So now, let me take you to a couple of places. The year is 1832. A westward breeze brushes the back of your head as you stare off into the empty vastness of the sea. All around you, this air has this crisp, salty smell that can only be captured by the pristine waters off the coast of South America. Above you, you hear the cry of gulls following your journey as you progress. Your ship, the SS Beagle, has been sailing now for well over a year, and off in the distance you spot a series of islands off the coast. As you approach, you begin to notice the miles of rocky outcrops dotted with lush green trees, crystal blue waters, and a myriad of wildlife in every one of these locations. Upon exploring these places, you begin to notice something. All of the organisms that you're finding there are different in small and subtle ways. These are the Galapagos finches that so long ago inspired Darwin to draft his theory of evolution. Now, I want you to take a moment to consider the profound impact that Darwin's theory of evolution had on human civilization. Before its publication, human beings viewed themselves from a drastically different position than we do today, one mired in theological assumptions and visions of humanity as the primary creation of some higher power. We put significant importance on the religious institutions that were supposed to provide us the genesis of humanity. But Darwin's theory contradicted that, and led perhaps to one of the most significant declines in religious fervor that was experienced at that time. Now, Darwin's theory completely changed the way that we look at and think about animals, and it led to a very, very important philosophical conclusion. All life is inherently related to each other. Human beings, like every other organism in the world, is originated from the same spark of life. Darwin's theory and the publication thereof marked one of the first steps in the evolution of our thought processes that would eventually lead to the scientific worldview held today. And without the diversity of the Galapagos Islands and the other parts of the world, it's unsure about whether or not his theory would have ever been completed. But we move on now. It's December of 1903. You find yourself on a windswept beach off the coast of North Carolina. A frigid breeze blows in from the north, indicative of the cold winter yet to come. But this breeze will do nothing to dampen your spirits today. For off in the distance, you see the strange wooden contraption that will eventually give man the power of flight, the culmination of years of human ingenuity. This is where the Wright brothers first completed their successful flight. But they had plenty of inspiration to pull from. The biological world had already mastered the concept of flight millions of years ago and in a number of different ways. Through the slow process of evolution, our reptilian brothers eventually found themselves with the ability to glide and then fly, becoming the many species of birds that fill our trees with beautiful colors and spread their joyous songs throughout the forest. See, like planes, birds use their feathers to create areas of high and low pressure beneath their wings to soar through the sky. And now look at where we are. We can get from Sarasota to Tokyo in less than 24 hours, and we can do so in relative comfort. But as inspiring, fascinating, and interesting as the flight of birds is, it pales in comparison to the true masters of the sky, the insects. You see, we've really only just now begun to understand just how ingenious the flight of insects is. Dragonflies, for example, can easily fly over 30 miles an hour. They can pick out the motion of a fly, a mosquito, or any other flying insect in a fraction of their second and use their wings to catch their prey mid-flight. By independently utilizing each of their four wings, they can make unbelievably swift acrobatic motions through the air. And now we've begun modeling our planes off of them. 4 propellers that will allow the planes to make unprecedented swift aerial maneuvers. Imagine where we would be without flight. It completely changed what distances we considered far too far to travel and did wonders to facilitate a significantly more connected world. I'd like to move on yet again to another location, however. This time, we move on to the year 1969. A crisp blue sky fills your eye, broken only by the spattered backdrop of clouds across the backdrop of the majestic Rocky Mountains to the east. All around you, the jays and chickadees are singing with a joy that can only be expressed after the first snow melt of a long winter. But all around you permeates the smell of sulfur as hot geysers release steam into the air from all around you. You're a part of the research team from Indiana University that has been sent to Yellowstone National Park to investigate a new species of thermophilic bacteria that will later be known as Thermus aquaticus. Now, as uninteresting as this tiny colony of bacteria might seem, it did an unprecedented number to revolutionize the field of microbiology and in turn the medical field. You see, in the study of cellular biology, we use this technique called PCR, or polymerase chain reaction. Now, I'll spare you the details, but essentially through this process, we can amplify certain regions of DNA and from pretty much any viable sample. Now, the species of bacteria that was discovered in 1969 was so special because it contained an enzyme called Taq polymerase, which allowed for this process to become optimized and incredibly inexpensive. PCR is a very important tool in the diagnostic of a multitude of ailments and is the primary tool used to facilitate the early diagnostic of diseases such as leukemia and lymphoma. It also allows us to produce the highly specific and accurate identification of both bacterial and viral diseases. Our ability to detect and treat the multitude of illnesses that plague our society today is a direct result of the diverse pool of life that is present on our Earth. And, this is not the first species that revolutionized the biomedical field, but the biomedical field growth would easily be stunted without conserving biodiversity. So now I'd like to move on one last time to talk about the revolution of solar power and how it is being influenced by biomimicry. You see, plants are experts at this process of taking light and converting it into food. They can capture these tiny photons of energy and use it to create food from carbon dioxide and water. Now, the video that's being played behind me, a group of researchers used fluorescent technology to tag individual molecules of glucose and map how they travel through the plant. You can actually see the molecules go into the leaves, travel through the stem, and finally down into the roots where they're going to be stored. What I'd like to show you today is a new development in solar technology, one that will potentially solve one of the biggest issues associated with residential solar panels. This is the artificial leaf currently being developed by Dr. Daniel Nocera and his team at Harvard University. This small chip of cobalt, phosphorus, and a few other elements is groundbreaking for a number of reasons. First of all, it's incredibly inexpensive to produce. But far more importantly, through the power of sunlight and sunlight alone, this little chip can split water into its component elements of hydrogen and oxygen. The gases can then be captured and stored in a hydrogen fuel cell. So now when it's too dark and your solar panels aren't giving you the energy you need, you can switch your system to this hydrogen fuel cell that has been building up fuel over a significant amount of time. The multitude of innovations that have been inspired by biodiversity goes on. We as a species have been fundamentally molded and shaped by our continued desire to pursue the mysteries that create life. Over the eons, evolution has created a beautifully diverse world with innovative solutions to the multitude of problems that we face on an everyday basis. The only problem now is whether or not those organisms are still going to be present for long enough for us to find, discover, and understand what they are. Conservation biology isn't just about protecting the environment, recovering endangered species, or creating habitat. It's about fostering a sense of harmony between human beings and the natural world, so that we may both learn from and support the complex biological community that we are an intimate part of. Thank you.